My golden child sister stole my wife's earrings and my parents refused to do anything about it, so I ruined their reputation. Growing up, I was always neglected in comparison to my older sister. She was the miracle baby who was the one to survive after my mother's 2 miscarriages. I, on the other hand, was a complete accident. This caused my parents to heavily favor her, and my sister relished in this favoritism as often as she could. When we were younger, she stole my belongings with no repercussions, treated me like dirt, embarrassed me in front of my friends, and so on. My parents also played a heavy part in all of this. Her birthdays were way more extravagant. She would even get presents on my birthday. My parents attended her special events and not mine, so on and so on. Needless to say, this caused a huge rift in between us when I moved away for college when I turned 18. I was now no contact with them, and my mental health improved a lot due to this. In college is where I met the love of my life, Cindy. She was in one of my classes and we clicked very well. I developed a major crush on her quickly, and worked up the courage to ask her out. She agreed on a date and here we are, 7 years later, happily married. Cindy knows about my past with my sister and parents, and thus was very reluctant to open up a form of communication between us and them when they reached out a year ago. I was skeptical at first too, but I gave my family a second chance. At first it seemed like the right choice. Over this year, I had built my relationship with my sister and parents back up to decent levels. We talked about my life and theirs regularly enough, and it really seemed like my parents had changed their act. It seemed like my sister had changed too. She apologized for her actions when we were younger. Our relationship became so much better. In fact, my parents and sister asked me if they could come over during the holidays to meet Cindy. Considering they were not invited to our wedding or anything, they had not met her. I discussed their offer with Cindy and she was firmly against it. I'm ashamed to say I fought Cindy on it. She said she had a bad feeling about it and told me that meeting up with them was a bad choice. She always had amazing intuition about these things and I should have listened. I'm such an idiot for not. Via stubbornness, I convinced Cindy that everything was okay and there was no harm in meeting my parents, and she reluctantly gave in. I let my parents know they could come over and they did. They arrived next weekend, and when I opened the door for them I was astonished to see that they had not changed much in the past 7 years. I saw my sister too, who did not want to be there as much as my parents. Nonetheless, I welcomed them in and introduced Cindy to them. We all sat down for dinner and caught up. We all strayed away from the topic of how neglected I was as a child and rather made small talk, catching up on mom and dad's business, my sister's college studies, and so on. There was only one point in the dinner when we were close to having an argument. That happened when my sister insulted the food Cindy, but Cindy quickly put her in her place. My sister tried to argue, but I shut her down too. She looked to our parents for help, who stayed silent, and my sister was visibly shocked by the fact our dear parents were not coming to her aid immediately like they always did. Shortly after this, perhaps 10 minutes later, she excused herself to go to the bathroom, and came down maybe 2 or 3 minutes later. The rest of the dinner went well and we said our goodbyes. After dinner my wife and I discussed the whole thing and came to the conclusion that my parents had possibly changed, but my sister was as insufferable as ever and there was no way we could have contact with her. That's when my wife went upstairs and left me downstairs, telling me to put on a movie and that she'll be back down in a minute. A minute later I heard her frantically making noise upstairs. Whatever was going on was very serious, as I could tell she was turning the room upside down. I heard the bed being banged against the wall, drawers slamming open and shut, and her yelling, "Where are they?" I came upstairs to ask my wife what was going on and she told me that her earrings were missing. Those earrings. For context, my wife owns a special pair of earrings she only wears on the most rare occasions. These earrings are very old, passed down for now 4 generations, and are priceless to her, as well as valued very high in the market. Well, these earrings were missing. We turned the house upside down and did not find them. With no luck, my wife asked me if it was possible that my sister took them. That's when I realized. After getting angry that Cindy shut her insults down, she went upstairs. My wife had left the earrings on the nightstand. My sister used to be a kleptomaniac when we were little, and my parents always enabled her. It all clicked. It simply had to be my sister. My wife flipped out at me, yelling at me for inviting someone I knew was a kleptomaniac into our home and not informing her of it. She stated had she known she would have never allowed my sister to come over. I apologized over and over to her, and it took a lot for me to convince her not to take my head off. I realized I had effed up very badly and rushed to contact my parents. I was able to call them and demanded to speak to my sister. I accused her of stealing my wife's earrings, and I got a, maybe I did, maybe I didn't from her, alongside a laugh. That settled it. I knew she did it, she knew I knew she did it, but there was nothing I could do to get them back. Or could I? I had a way to go nuclear on them, but at first I didn't want to. I assured my wife I would get her the earrings back. I contacted my parents demanding for them to force her to give them back. They told me that although they sympathized with my wife, my sister was a grown woman and they could not force her to do anything. They also told me I had not proof, and although that was true, everyone under the sun knew she had stole it. So here is where I threatened my parents to go nuclear. They had mentioned to me that they were still running their business over the dinner, and I remember that business very well. It was very shady, taxes were avoided, it was a miracle nobody had reported them for it yet. It was a fake charity that looked legit on the outside more or less. Well, I told my parents that either their daughter give us back the earrings, or there will be an anonymous tip given about their business. My parents crapped themselves so much that they drove for 5 hours with my sister the very next day to give me back those earrings. Well, my wife convinced me to be petty. I didn't inform anyone of the business, but I texted the extended family group chat, which I was added into once my parents contacted me again. This text informed everyone of what my sister did, what my parents did, and warned them all to never let my sister into their homes again, or there is a food chance that their belongings will also be stolen. My parents have contacted me asking to come over and talk without my sister, and I agreed but told them we shall talk at a coffee shop, as I am uncomfortable letting them into my home again. My wife did not want me speaking to them, but as far as I am concerned, they're dead to me. I'm only going to talk for closure.
My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I have been with my husband since we were 15. I got pregnant with his child at 17 and we moved in with my parents. I then gave birth to my now 22-year-old daughter. My husband and we went on to have 3 more kids, and I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my last child. I really thought I had a good marriage. We were intimate more than twice a week, we went on date nights, we bought each other gifts, we didn't fight. But my entire world was shattered on New Year's Eve when I returned early from a trip I had taken with some friends. I walked into my bedroom to find my mom having intimacy with my husband. My mother screamed at me to get out of their bedroom, which really shook me up even more. Unfortunately, my oldest daughter was also home in her bedroom across the house getting ready for a party. She ran out and witnessed my unclothed 68-year-old mother run out of our house and slam the door. My daughter was devastated and went to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything until I first talked to my husband. I asked him for the truth. He told me that my mom seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house. Been having unprotected intimacy at least once a month for longer than we were married, which was for 22 years. I ran the math and was horrified, because the timeline meant my twin brothers and youngest brother could be my husband's children. I immediately called my dad and told him to come to my house without my mom. I made my husband confess and my dad was devastated. He and my mom were high school sweethearts too. Needless to say, we could hear my mother screaming from her house when he confronted her. My parents are our neighbors. I then told my older sister and she and I decided to have her throw a party for the whole extended family, and we invited my ex's family as well. At the party, I had my eldest daughter take all the kids to our basement and put on a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings, and I told them exactly what my mom and husband been doing. Most of the family is on my side, except my 3 youngest siblings, my twin sister and my ex's entire family. They all say I'm an a-hole for dropping this publicly. Word got out and my mom's best friend, who is on leadership at my mom's church, called me to verify. My mom has since been let go as the children's pastor there, and she claims I've essentially ruined her reputation and life. My dad kicked her out and she's now living with my twin sister, and lastly, my dad insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys before he'd consider anything to do with their marriage. The twins are my husband's bio children. I've since kicked him out and he's living with his parents. My father and I are discussing me moving into his much larger house and him selling my grandfather's house and him giving me the money to buy a new house somewhere else to get rid of the memories. My husband is appalled and furious that I proved he actually is about to have 7 kids, instead of 5, that I'm going to be taking half his business away from him. My husband started his own HVAC company a few years back, and for the first 5 years, I helped him get it set up, ran the office completely, and took time away from my teaching career to help him get this established. In my state, all marital assets, including businesses, are split 50-50. Since the house was still in my father's name, my husband will get no money from the sale, neither will my mother, since inherited assets are not subject to be split in divorces. My mother is also likely to not get any alimony, as our state is not a no-fault divorce state. I'm now over a month removed, still extremely bitter and angry at my mother, especially at her hypocrisy of calling me a WHRE and shaming my family, when she's done much worse. I also despise my ex with everything within me now, as he was doing both my mom and me minutes apart in some instances. He got my mother pregnant less than a week after getting me pregnant, and while I thought it was so cute and fun that I shared a pregnancy experience with my mom, she was carrying my children's half-siblings. He has broken all trust I had in men and being faithful. I have already procured a good lawyer from the firm that helped us in financial matters for both me and my dad is helping pay for it. As for how I had no idea this affair was ongoing, my husband confirmed to me that they would have intimacy at my mom's office, at church, in their cars, at a motel, and when we built the business, they started having it routinely in his office, once I went back to teaching. They also had it in our houses too when my father would go away on business trips or I'd be out of town. It was pure happenstance that I came home a day early from a trip, because I was uncomfortable from being nearly 7 months pregnant and just wanted my own bed, for me to find out. Knowing they'd be carrying on this full-blown affair still if I hadn't caught them is what I'm still upset about. The fact that the grandmother and father of my children cared so little about destroying our families is what I can't get past. What's hardest for me is that my own mother would do this to me and would continue to do this for years, and not caring when it all blew up in her face that she would be destroying her entire family. Edit. Also, to add insult to injury, my husband confirmed in one of our mediated conversations the affair started when I apparently made him angry. He didn't tell me and instead vented to my mom when they were alone. She comforted him and they had intimacy. He loved it and then pursued her after that. He said he would have divorced me, but knew he'd get cut off from her and she was so much better at intimacy than me, so stuck it out with me. He told me I was a placeholder. Of all the betrayal and low blows, that statement is what keeps me up at night. Update 2. My manipulative boyfriend recently found out that his ex just got engaged and has not stopped literally crying since. So my ex went effing insane after I moved back home. I blocked him from essentially everything, changed all of my passwords and deactivated my Facebook, so he had no way of reaching me aside from literally driving to my parents' house to see me. Apparently he started sending messages to my friends asking to use their Skype accounts to talk to me. He told them that I stole some things from him when I moved out and he wanted them back. I got a few phone calls from my friends asking me about this. They told me that they knew that I didn't steal anything from him because that's not like me at all, but they wanted to know why he was so desperate to contact me. I wasn't ready to tell the whole story, so I told them that I didn't know what was going on, but asked them to not give them their Skype accounts by any means. A few days after that, the phone calls started. All from a few different numbers that I didn't recognize. I didn't pick any of them up, but one day I'd have about 20 missed calls from one number, then another 20 from a different number. I had to set my phone to only allow calls from specific numbers, otherwise it would go straight to my voicemail. Even if he couldn't reach me, he succeeded making me feel pretty isolated. After the 5th day of the phone calls, I broke down and told my mom everything that happened. She didn't say much, she mostly let me talk. Afterward she told me that I made the right decision but that there's absolutely no reason why I should be going through this alone. She said that she didn't want to push me to tell her what happened until I was ready, but that the best thing that I could be doing right now is spending time with people that love and support me. So after going with me to get my phone number changed, she encouraged me to start calling my friends and telling them what happened, and to just hang out with them more in general. I had it stuck in my head that everyone would side with my ex and tell me that I made a terrible mistake, that his intentions were good, and I blew things out of proportion by insinuating that he only proposed because his ex-girlfriend got engaged. But I was actually overwhelmed by my friends' responses. Apparently my ex had been telling everyone that we broke up because I had major jealousy issues over his ex, but once they heard my side of the story, I was actually shocked by how many of them said that it made sense. They've all told me that I've done the right thing and that they'd back me up no matter what. I just felt this huge sense of relief and have been making an effort to go out more. I will be honest, though. There are times where I wonder if I was wrong. Sometimes I think that maybe my ex had been grieving over his old relationship and proposing to me was his way of starting over. Sometimes I think that I turned down the only marriage proposal that I'll ever get. And sometimes I think that maybe I should have accepted, because I loved him and you don't often find people that you truly love. But then on the days that I'm feeling wiser, I remind myself of how bizarre our last few weeks together were, how I always knew deep down that I was second best for him, and how he's been behaving since we broke up. I've never seen him so unstable. Update 2. My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I was able to get temporary full physical and legal custody of my kids. My 14-year-old daughter asked me if I'd be willing to do family therapy with her and her dad. I did not want to do it. I fought it, but eventually I chose to do so for the sake of my daughter and her need to process everything and hopefully move on. I learned a lot more about the relationship between my ex and my egg donor due to homework the therapist gave us. My ex did reveal more things which I believe to be true. My egg donor had actually tried to seduce him well before she said she did, which was 18. From my ex's recollection, when my egg donor took over the youth group I was 15 and he was a few months from turning 15. She'd counsel him privately because he needed it. They kissed for the first time then. It was right around the time of the first kiss that my mom convinced him to ask me out and date me so they could keep seeing each other without suspicion. At this revelation, I was devastated. My entire relationship was built on a lie and my husband never loved me, and also a sense of relief knowing that I had absolutely nothing to do with their affair. The reason I believe this is true is that he asked me out. I had to get permission from my parents to date. At the time the rule was no one could date before age 16. My mom went to bat for me, or so I thought. We started dating right after he turned 15. The timeline adds up. Another thing I found out, they did not have full intimacy until he turned 18, and I guess that was his birthday present from her. Now for the update on my egg donor. After the last phone call with my aunt, I cut off contact with her and my grandmother. I was tired of my aunt trying to guilt trip me into talking to my egg donor. My grandma is a whole other problem and is beginning to show signs of dementia and senility. She is still harassing my egg donor and calling her a WHRE of Babylon, which I'm okay with. Then came my baby delivery date. My younger sister were the ones who helped me with labor and delivery plan. My ex knew what the plans were, but also that I did not want him at the hospital until I had already given birth and was in a better place for him to meet his son. He agreed to this. The day I went into labor, my sister took my youngest children to her home while my older sister was with me in the room. Apparently, my middle child needed something from the school and reached out to my ex to pick it up. My egg donor was with him when he took the call. He refused to let her come along as I did not want my children around my egg donor. She apparently followed him in her car to the store and then my sister's house and threw a temper tantrum on the front lawn of my sister's house. My ex broke up with her and told her she was too much drama and it just wasn't worth it anymore. She flew into a rage and physically attacked him, then started destroying things in my sister's yard. The cops were called. My egg donor was arrested for domestic violence. At that point my ex, my sister, and I all took out orders of protection against her due to the instability in the situation. Update: My egg donor has gone into hiding. Once my twin sons told her unequivocally they'd never live with her and that they wanted nothing to do with her, especially after how she got arrested, she began a whole lot of guilt-tripping and blaming them. She is now contesting the divorce from my dad and only speaking to him through her lawyer. As for my twin sister, who was previously on my egg donor's side, she got a wake-up call from this whole thing when my mother called her and berated her for 45 minutes for not bailing her out of jail. Apparently, my twin sister has been going through fertility issues. When my sister wasn't willing to pay the money to bail my egg donor out as she and her partner were saving up for another cycle of IVF, she realized that she was being manipulated and reached out to me. We have begun slowly talking again, but she is on my side regarding this all. She is also talking to my dad again, which for his sake, I'm happy that he is able to reconnect with her. My manipulative boyfriend recently found out that his ex just got engaged and has not stopped literally crying since. My relationship is over, at least I think. So these last 2 days have been really emotional. My boyfriend was gone all day yesterday. He was gone when I woke up, but he still wasn't home when I went to bed. I texted him once when I woke up to say good morning, and twice at night, one asking if he was coming home for dinner, and another asking if he was alright. I also tried calling his cell, but he didn't pick up. I thought that I deserved some answers, so I decided to snoop, something that I've done once before when I was feeling insecure about his relationship with his ex. Well, on his laptop hidden in a bunch of subfolders was an MS document with his ex's name. I read it, and I'm assuming that he just saved the last conversation that he had with her, right before she cut contact with him. It started out normally, but then he asked how her relationship with her boyfriend was going. She said that it was good, and that she was happy. And then it got weird, because he said, "Really? Are you sure?" She said yes and said that was a weird question, and he said, "I don't know, I don't believe that you're that happy." He then told her that her boyfriend will never treat her as well as he did, and that they've known each other for many of years. They've managed to stay friends after their breakup, that they've helped each other grow as people and that she should really give him another chance. He said that he's waited for her all these years and that he loves her and always believed they'd wind up together. This was all while he was with me. She called him an a-hole and told him that he had a lot of nerves to say all that to her when she told him a long time ago that they're only ever going to be friends, and that he's an even bigger a-hole for doing this while they were both in relationships. She told him to go to hell and to break up with me for my sake, because I deserve better. As far as I'm aware, the drunk threat incident happened a few weeks later, and that's when she completely severed ties with him. But all of this isn't even the worst part. My boyfriend woke me up this morning by calling me and telling me to come to the kitchen. He said that he made breakfast. So I go to the kitchen getting ready for a fight, and he made what honestly looked like an amazing breakfast. With a ring box in the middle of the table. He told me to open it and I did. He said something like, "These last 3 years with me has been an adventure and he hopes to keep making new adventures with me." I guess around this time I snapped out of whatever haze I've been in and I exploded. I demanded to know where he was all day yesterday, why he wouldn't contact me, why he's been crying over his ex for the last 3 months, as well as everything. He got mad at me for being mad. He told me that I should be happy because he was proposing, and asked me wasn't that what I wanted? I asked him why, when it's so obvious that he'd rather be with his ex. He told me that she's obviously moved on, so it's time for him to move on too. He stated that by marrying me, it's a sign to her that he is moving on. He literally stated that. I've never been so angry in my life. I've been so incredibly patient with this man and done my best to be understanding of his situation. I've literally given him all that I had, but I'm not going to get married to him just to be his consolation prize. It's so ironic because had he proposed 4 months earlier, I would have been ecstatic. Now it just broke our relationship. So, I called my dad and he's on his way now to help me move back in with him and my mom. That's it. I'm a wreck, but I think it's just because everything wrong and twisted in this relationship is hitting me and it took so long for me to understand. And my ex is just sitting on the couch with his laptop, still looking at a picture of his ex. My lying husband has been sleeping with my mother for 22 years, so I'm going to destroy both of their lives. So I had a phone conversation with my aunt a few days ago and she told me there is a family history of cheating on their side of the family. My grandma cheated on my grandpa for years but they reconciled. My aunt herself had multiple affairs but is still married to my uncle. She tried blaming genetics on my mom's affair. I laughed out loud at the absurdity of that attempt to justify her affair, and my aunt is now mad at me for not hearing my egg donor out and her explanations for cheating. I hung up on the phone and prepared myself for meeting my mother, filthy spineless ex, and the lawyers face to face. And yesterday night that's exactly what I did. The meeting was crazy to say the least. Essentially, my egg donor said she knew it was wrong but she enjoyed the attention. She stated the intimacy was great and she enjoyed the thrill of it. She kept sleeping with my dad because she enjoyed their financial stability and carefree life and wanted to stay married. She purposely slept with him after each intimate encounter with my ex to ensure that if she got pregnant she could pass the child off. She also admitted to enjoying the knowledge that my ex enjoyed intimacy with her more than me. He then said that she is moving in with my ex to his new place and that she invited my twin sons to live with them. The twins have visited once since the affair and told her they don't like my ex and refuse to treat him like he's their father. My egg donor said eventually they'll come around once she's married to my ex and then she'll have her family back. I laughed out loud and told her she was delusional and needed psychiatric help. Then I told her I would be taking out an order of protection against her so she'd have no access to my minor children. She called me a jealous and ungrateful cow for not appreciating that she didn't terminate me. She said I should be happy that they didn't kick me out when I came home knocked up at 17. She even had the nerve to say I should be thankful she kept my husband happy when I couldn't so he didn't divorce me and leave me a broken and damaged good single mother. She then told my dad she suffered from postpartum depression after my birth and my dad ignored it. Apparently that made her feel alone so she felt justified in hating me and having affairs. She admitted to having multiple affairs from 6 months after I was born until this New Year's Eve and said she'd still be doing it if I hadn't ruined everything. So, turns out my 2 younger sisters may not be my dad's either. My dad is even more heartbroken and angry, but we did have both our lawyers present and we got it on record. After this, I sent a message to my ex through my lawyer that I will be filing an order of protection tomorrow so that my kids won't have to go to my ex's house if my mother is there.